Alright, it's time for the ending of the Civil Core storyline. I've got videos dissecting every individual chapter in case you need to catch up, because it's time to dig into the big finale. Green Lantern number 18 is written by Jeremy Adams with art by Zermanico, colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr., and letters by Dave Sharp. The title of this issue is Civil Core Part 3, Valley of Dying Stars. Lord Premier Tharos stands tall in the skies above the planet Oa, burning with the power of the Dark Star Ring, as his army of United Planets Shadow Lanterns gathered beneath him. If he wanted to, he could easily obliterate Oa with his own power. But for a corrupt politician, it's not just about having power, it's about lording that power over others. He wants to be able to snap his fingers and watch as his army of worshippers does his bidding, tearing down anyone and anything that could oppose him. Tharos built himself an empire, and now he seeks to install himself as its god. On the surface of Oa, the battle is already raging. Just scanning the room, we see Hal, Salak, John, Badge, Guy, Joe, Alan, Simon, 26, and Sinestro. No sign of Razor or Shepard, but St. Walker is still here and is fighting alongside the Resistance. If we zoom in, St. Walker is very clearly glowing with an aura of blue light. That means he still has his Blue Lantern ring, and it still has a charge. That means the bad guys let him keep his functional power ring when they captured him and threw him in jail. They didn't take it away, and they didn't have the ring hunters disable it. Which is especially dumb of them considering the fact that proximity to Green Lantern rings unlock all of the higher functions of a Blue Lantern ring. So the planet Oa is the worst place to imprison St. Walker if you're not gonna take his ring away. Focusing on this massive army of enemy lanterns is a war of attrition that the Resistance can't win, so Hal decides to go on the offensive. They split their forces. Hal, John, Guy, Simon, and Joe head straight for Tharos to attack him directly. If they can beat him, it's all over, but that's easier said than done. Before they can even get close to him, Tharos unleashes the Radiant Dead in a maelstrom of eldritch horror. They clearly need help, but backup isn't coming, since Jessica is still being held captive by Kilowog in the Chamber of the Unseeing. This is when Jessica does something really cool. Kilowog's mind and ring have been overwhelmed with the power of fear, but Jessica knows how to handle fear differently than most other Green Lanterns. For most Green Lanterns, fear is something they identify and then overcome, treating fear like an enemy to be defeated with all of your willpower. But not Jessica. She spent years living a life defined by fear, learning to understand fear inside and out, to the point that she was actually able to properly use a Sinestro Corps ring on her first try, which is something that most Green Lanterns can't do. And all of that matters a great deal because Jessica is currently being restrained by a projection of the same fear that's been overwhelming Kilowog's mind. So she reaches out through the fear being projected by Kilowog and is able to use that fear as a pathway to send Kilowog some of her own willpower. It washes over him, and for the first time in what feels like a very long time, Kilowog is himself again. We get to see Kilowog's memory of what happened to him on New Korugar. When he vanished in a flash of yellow light, that was the yellow central battery acting out of self-preservation. It spoke to Kilowog, choosing him to carry its flame since there are those who intend to see it extinguished. It's strange that the central battery is communicating like a being with self-awareness. I don't think we've ever seen one do that before. I'm tempted to speculate that maybe this is somehow parallax, but nothing about Kilowog's condition or what Jessica just did would make sense if there was a malicious entity in the driver's seat. Anyway, the yellow central battery gave Kilowog its power before it was destroyed, and then Tharos manipulated Kilowog's emotions, turning him into a loyal soldier. And I think it's very important to remember that those are two distinctly separate things. Unlike with many of the other Lanterns, Kilowog didn't gain the power of fear because Tharos manipulated him. Kilowog gained the power of fear from the yellow central battery. And all Jessica did was undo Tharos' manipulation. So Kilowog should still have the power of the yellow central battery contained within him, even though he's seemingly returned to his normal green self. Meanwhile, inside of the Source Lantern, Starshroud is having some pretty wild cosmic revelations as he absorbs this colossal amount of power into his body through the Source Ring. Apparently, the purpose of the Source Lantern is to draw in emotional spectrum power from across the universe in order to heal the Guardians, who are floating in a big grid formation lining the inner walls of the Source Lantern. Are the Guardians just taking advantage of the power source that John built? Or are we now saying that John built the Source Lantern for the purpose of restoring the Guardians? Also, there are a ton of Guardians in there. I count 60 in this panel alone. The implication of there being so many Guardians could change pretty much anything and everything about the universe going forward. But for now, Varen is content to view them as batteries he can drain. And Kyle Rayner is content to view Varen as someone whose ass needs kicking. It's funny, thanks to the chaos with the emotional spectrum, Kyle's mind has been in a state of hazy agony for this entire run, until this moment right now. So he doesn't really even know who this is or what's going on. All he knows is that a big evil looking dude is trying to do something with the power of the spectrum, so that means it's time to bust out a two-handed greatsword and go to work. Unfortunately, it seems Varen was able to absorb energy faster than Kyle could stop him. The Source Lantern explodes, devastating the planet Oa. This also means that the power supply of the entire Green Lantern Corps has been cut off, excluding the 6 people with rings linked to the big battery on Earth. So the Source Lantern is gone, and hovering above the crater is Varen, the Star Shroud, brimming with emotional spectrum energy gathered by the Source Ring. Above him stands Tharos, the Dark Star, empowered by the will of Olgren and the Radiant Dead wielded through the Dark Star Ring. This is the first time they've encountered each other since both have ascended to power, and they instantly see each other as a threat. They each want to be the last man standing with all of the power and all of the control, so they immediately try their hardest to annihilate each other. The Radiant Dead being summoned by Tharos have grown larger and larger, and so have the rifts in space that they emerge from. So the Lanterns decide to try and throw both Tharos and Varen through one of those rifts. Hal, John, and Guy push them in while Simon and Joe try their best to hold the rifts open with giant mech constructs. But the bad guys are too powerful and are about to get the better of the Lanterns when Kilowog and Jessica show up to save the day. They hit Tharos and Varen as hard as they can from behind, throwing them off balance, and the other Lanterns keep applying pressure. There's a great line where Tharos says that they can't win because he has the will of a god, and Hal just says, "And I have the will of a man," before throwing Tharos away like garbage. Once both of them are through, Kyle is able to close the rift. Now, this is important. Where did Tharos and Varen go? Well, they went to the place that the Radiant Dead come from. The Radiant Dead are extensions of the will of Olgren, the oldest of the old gods. His is the will that powers the Dark Star Ring. We see that Tharos and Varen are immediately confronted by some unseen figure as soon as the rift closes. Varen is terrified. Tharos recognizes it and is also scared. And the unseen figure says, "The power, my ring, my hunger." I think this is Olgren, or at least some form of Olgren. He's still in a bunch of pieces scattered all over the universe and the multiverse, but each piece does have some degree of sentience. And since the Dark Star Ring contains Olgren's will, does that mean they just united 2 different pieces of Olgren, bringing the old god one step closer to rising again? All that to say, we are very clearly not done with Olgren or Tharos or Varen. They'll probably be off the table for a little while, but I fully expect them to come back in a major way before the end of the Jeremy Adams run. The last page of this wraps up very quickly, and a lot of information is delivered through Hal's inner monologue. Oa is a post-apocalyptic wasteland. Ellie Rose helps Kelly wake up. The Guardians are back, but have changed in some unspecified way. Kyle says the emotional spectrum is wild, and that people can now manifest any color of spectrum power at any time, including kinds we've never seen before. Kyle coins the term fractal lanterns to describe this phenomenon. A lot of this feels like Jeremy Adams had 1 page left to check things off the list, and had to just do it this way because there wasn't enough space to do anything else. Either way, the Green Lantern Corps has been reset to square one. And they're not alone. A few issues ago, Carol was helping a Ranian ship that was trying to ferry Thanagarian survivors to safety, and they ended up running right into the Predator, the love entity of the emotional spectrum. At least that's how we're used to thinking of it. Look how Carol's inner monologue describes it. An alien creature that hid itself inside the star sapphire. I was told it was the embodiment of love. I even thought it was once. But now... What Carol is doing right here is attempting to reconcile two different versions of the Predator. In the Silver Age, the Predator was revealed to be a malicious alien creature that bonded itself to the power of the star sapphire. Then, when the Jeff Johns era of Green Lantern created the concept of the emotional spectrum and the entities that served as the living embodiment of those emotions, it was fairly easy to retcon the Predator into being the love entity, since it was already connected to the star sapphire and could already possess and control a host the same way that the Parallax entity does. But the way Carol is talking about the Predator now makes me wonder, are we going back on the retcon? Even during the Jeff Johns era, the Predator was shown to be extremely possessive and manipulative, just like it is now. Could it have simply convinced everyone that it's the love entity? Could it have made the right people believe that it was intrinsically linked to the power of love as a way to secure its place, as a way of staying close to Carol, who it's very clearly fixated on? And that fixation is threatening to overtake Carol's life all over again. In the old days, back in the Silver Age, Carol would adopt a different personality whenever she became the Star Sapphire. That's because the Predator was inside of the Star Sapphire gem. It's not a perfectly consistent explanation, since the entire concept of the Predator has been overhauled and retconned so many times. But the point is that, in this moment, the Predator is trying to make Carol believe that her strength always came from it instead of from herself. That she was only so capable because it was in control of her. That she's only even a Star Sapphire now because it chose to send the last Star Sapphire ring to her after the planet Zamaron fell. And it insidiously tries to frame its total control over her as an act of love. And in a way, this is the perfect confrontation for Carol to have at this stage of her character development. For the first time in her life, Carol has chosen to be a hero, a full-blown superhero. She has no idea if it'll work out, but she's smart enough to realize that it's doomed to fail if she doesn't believe in herself. So she rejects the Predator. She recognizes that it may have made her stronger in some ways, but the strength it offers has nothing to do with love. For a very long time now, Carol has believed in and advocated for a form of love that no one, not the Predator, not even the Zamarons, were ever able to truly embrace. Love that is patient and kind while also being righteous and powerful. Love is a power that gives, and it has nothing to do with a parasite obsessed with taking agency away from another person. This is actually a pretty huge step forward for Carol. In the past, she's openly admitted to being selfish when it comes to love. There was a time when she only got into romantic relationships with people because she was afraid that her ring would leave her if she wasn't in love with anyone. That's the entire reason that she and Kyle were a thing during the Green Lantern New Guardians series. She was using him because that was the only way she knew to keep her powers. Today, Carol Ferris proved that she isn't that person anymore, and I can't wait to see where she goes from here. The issue ends on an epilogue setting up the next arc. We see Nathan, the Sorrow Lantern, land on an unnamed planet and walk into a spooky castle, seeking help dealing with his overflowing emotions. Someone inside has been calling out to him, promising that he could help Nathan and everyone else stop feeling emotions forever. This is Starbreaker, a Silver Age Justice League villain. He's an energy vampire, and he's also the father of Belsbeth, the vampire lady from the Black Stars during the Grant Morrison run of Green Lantern. He's been around the DC universe here and there since the 1970s, but perhaps most importantly, he was also a featured antagonist in an arc of Jeremy Adams' run on The Flash, which ended right before he started writing Green Lantern. Is this just a villain that Jeremy Adams happens to like? Or is there something we can glean about where Green Lantern may be going by looking at that Flash story? I don't know yet, but it's probably significant that this is a villain with the ability to absorb and redistribute power, coming into the spotlight at the same time that we're probably about to see wild new colors erupt from the emotional spectrum. And that wall behind him with 7 empty spaces reminds me a lot of the Geoff Johns era, where different factions were trying to gather up power from every different color Lantern Corps. Does this mean we're going to have 7 new kinds of lantern, including Sorrow? And actually, this is also the exact same pattern as that pedestal on Earth that makes new Green Lantern rings. Coincidence? Maybe, we'll see. I wonder, is Nathan's desire to stop his constant flood of emotion the result of his power specifically being sorrow? Or is it the fact that he might be the one and only person in the entire universe acting as a conduit for the power of sorrow? And that's an overwhelming amount of power for one person to handle. If that's the case, then it may be made worse by the fact that there's never been any sort of infrastructure set up to manage the power of sorrow. We've seen several times how dangerous it is to mainline willpower without proper safeguards. So maybe the way you save Nathan is by making him a proper battery to regulate all of this power. I don't know, I'm getting way ahead of myself here, but I think that's a good sign since it means that I'm really interested in what's coming next. So that's Green Lantern number 18, the end of the Civil Corps story arc. Now I want to know what you think. Did they try to cram too much into this story? Is the Predator being retconned again? Where the heck did Razor and Shepard go? Tell me all about it in the comments section, and be sure to subscribe if you're curious about all of this business with Starbreaker and the Fractal Lanterns, because I'll be covering all of it as it happens. So until then, thank you for taking the time to watch. My name is Dan, we'll talk again soon.